Since he began farming in Grundy County, Illinois, nearly 40 years ago, Jay Fillman has been involved in a variety of business ventures. From his endeavors in crop insurance to his work with biodiesel fuels, Jay has relied upon data to make decisions and to analyze performance. I spoke with him about his passion for numbers and how digital tools have impacted the way he approaches his operation. Jay, let's talk a bit about the business, the family farm. Give us some of the background, some of the history on your farm and your father before you.
Okay. My great-grandfather was homesteaded ground from the railroad out in Iowa. And then my grandfather met a girl from this area and moved back here 98 years ago. And he started out with just a diversified family farm, a few cows, cattle, and pigs. And then my dad started farming, as he grew up. And we started out milking cows, and then we switched to beef cattle and raising pigs, and then now I just do all grain.
You haven't just farmed through the years. You've done some other things. Talk a little more about your whole background in business.
I got out of college and I thought I wanted to farm, and that's what I'd always loved doing, but profitability and having enough money to send your kids to college kind of entered into it during the 80s. So I'd always done income taxes and bookkeeping, so I've had several accounting businesses over the years. I started an insurance business when hogs were so profitable I couldn't stand it anymore. And I still have the insurance business, and then I was a founder of an ethanol plant in Rochelle, and I was also a developer of a biodiesel plant in Seneca. Ended up being the CFO of the company and had 200 employees, and we were traded on the American Stock Exchange. So it was really interesting. You learn a lot dealing with people outside of agriculture.
How has it helped you in your particular operation now, your grain enterprise, corn and soybean production?
Well, the biggest thing I think I learned is with all the different enterprises is the only thing that matters is in agriculture we can't control what we make, but we can control what we spend. So I've always tried to, in any business I worked in, drive the costs down to where I could be the least cost producer, because I always figured at the end of the day I'd still be in business. There was a couple years in the 80s when farm credit had gone through a big expansion phase where they pushed us all to be levered up and borrow as much money as we could. Then all of a sudden when things changed in the late 80s and we had some bad crops and things, they were trying to sell everybody out. And I never wanted to go through that again. So I just developed my operation where I could be the least cost producer, and I figured I'd always be in business that way.
Where did this avocation for numbers, where did that come from? Was it your dad? Did you learn some lessons from your father?
My dad was on the Growmark Board of Directors for over 20 years in Bloomington on the Tri-State Board, so he was always involved in business. I never did well in math in school, which I don't quite understand, but when I went to the U of I took an income tax course, and Al Bach was the teacher, and it was so interesting to find out that you could make more money managing your income taxes than you could managing your cattle all year. If you did your income taxes well and planned well, you could save more money than you maybe made on the cattle. So that was like a light bulb moment that management was more important than physical energy. So I kind of grew from there and just kind of fell into it. It seemed like it's a fun thing to do to kind of create profit out of thin air if you can, change your depreciation schedule or something like that.
Let's talk about Climate FieldView.
Sure.
This had to be right down your alley. Being a numbers guy, Climate FieldView, helping you aggregate the data. Talk a bit about your experience.
Yeah, I always raised food grade corn and soybeans. I had a yield monitor early that would just do per load weigh off the combine. But you'd get that data and there was really nothing you could do with it. Well, then when Climate started selling the total package, I just realized that the data you get, you can use it instantly. It's not like you have to sit there and try to take it home, print out the map, try to figure out why this went together. Their package brings it all together so you can sit there on the iPad and actually learn instantly just by looking at it. And also when you're going through the field, it's amazing the things you pick up.
How important is it to you to be able to share the data with partners in your business?
The biggest use I've seen so far is with seed corn and chemicals. because as you're combining, if there's a weedy spot, you can just circle it on the screen. It's very user-friendly. And then when you go back, you can say to the chemical guy, look, next year there was a chemical-resistant weed patch right here. You know, make sure we hit that, or get a different weed killer in that field or something. Or the tile contractors, you can say, look, there's 3 broken tile holes over here. Here's the iPad, walk over there. It's made it so much easier to go back. As you get older, you realize your memory's not as good as it used to be, and you think you're going to write it down in your notebook so you remember where that broken tile was. But with Climate FieldView, you just touch the screen. It prompts you to put in whatever label you want on there, and they've just taken the package and made it to where it is so user-friendly. There's not a learning curve. You don't have to figure out how to use it. You can just kind of play around with it and do what you want to do.
Would you say that also to a seasoned veteran such as yourself in agriculture? I mean, you know, I envision so many people wrapping their arms around Climate FieldView who are 25, 30, 35, but to someone who is our age, it's not so difficult, you're saying.
Right. My first calculator did square roots, and that was amazing. And it was about this big, you know. To be able to get Climate FieldView and work it without reading a manual or just being able to intuitively start working on the screen and do what you want to do is a huge advancement. I mean, it's the easiest one I've used, and I've been using different programs over the years, and I've always kind of buy them, you use them, and then you kind of quit using them because you can't use the data. Climate FieldView has brought it into where it just works so easy, and an older guy doesn't have to try to figure it out. You can just use it, because you want it for a tool. You don't want to spend all your time trying to figure out how to use it.
Hasn't it been fun to have a front row seat on these dramatic changes in agriculture? Probably wasn't always fun, but as you look back on it, you've really seen some tremendous changes, haven't you, Jay?
Yes, my dad started out, we have pictures of my dad riding a pony and pulling a water wagon up to the thrashing machine. And then before he passed away, we had RTK guidance. So I started out driving an H raking hay, and we haven't seen the change that my father saw, but I think the next change for us is going to be this data and how we use it and make drive our yields higher so we can lower our cost.
That really is an important crop from the farm, isn't it? The data that you gather.
Yeah, and I think the fact that we can use it in Climate FieldView, whereas before we had the data but couldn't use it, it didn't really do us any good. But now that you can actually use it, it makes it so much better.
For Jay Fillman, harvesting the data is only part of the equation. With Climate FieldView, he's able to use the information to make better management decisions and to see the full story of his fields. Join us next time as we uncover more stories behind the acres on Freeways to Farms.